Are you checking your pastor's DMs? Not for their good or bad behavior, but the people who are listening to your church online are listening to the teaching pastor.
Right.
So that's who they feel the most connected with, probably over your church's Instagram account.
Welcome to the Carey Nieuwhof Leadership Podcast. I'm so glad you joined us. Welcome to all of our new viewers. This channel's growing rapidly. And maybe you're here for Annie F. Downs. Hey, we are going to talk about, well, how to really connect. I mean, she's a relationship expert. She's everybody's friends. What's the difference between digital and online? What a lot of churches are missing, and how to do your online and in-person well so that people actually connect. We can talk about that and a whole lot more. We have a lot of other amazing conversations here. So if you subscribe, you will get people like John Mark Comer, Tyler Staton, John Acuff, and a whole lot more right here on the podcast. And if you enjoyed today's episode, leave a rating and review. We're going to hear a quick word from our carefully selected sponsors, and then right into my conversation, which was recorded live at a conference in Nashville, the Connect Conference. You'll see it here. This episode is brought to you by Gloo Plus. If you've been listening for a while, chances are you're already using Gloo for free texting, just like 25,000 other churches. But if you're ready for the next step, Gloo Plus is where things really start to happen. When you sign up for Gloo Plus, you get premium texting with unlimited messages and groups. You get exclusive access to top ministry leaders and unbeatable deals on must-have church resources like the New Mover program, premium sermon kits, and AI-powered insights to grow your church. Church leaders everywhere are upgrading because they see the impact, like they see faster outreach, deeper connections, and massive time savings. So if you've been waiting, this is your encouragement. And now you can use this code CAREYSAVE20 for an extra 20% off. So join the fastest growing platform for ministries today. Visit gloo.us/plus, that's gloo.us/plus, and unlock everything your church needs to thrive. Today's episode is brought to you by the Church Network. The Church Network understands you can feel overwhelmed and alone in ministry, and so for nearly 70 years, they have been helping church operations leaders just like you, providing a supportive community and professional development resources designed to help you grow and thrive. And you can join them July 15th through 18th in Omaha, Nebraska for the Church Network's annual conference, with an opportunity to create invaluable relationships, select from over 50 breakouts, and attend a massive trade show. This is an event you don't want to miss. You'll also hear from speakers such as Pastor Zach Zender, Brad Hill, and Erica Cole. Experience the training and community you need to be a confident church operations leader. Get more information and register today at thechurchnetwork.com/conference. That's thechurchnetwork.com/conference.
All right, Annie F. Downs, everybody.
Wow.
Well, I'm so glad to be at the Connect Conference with you. We're having this conversation live. And Annie, you know, it's so funny. You're so great at relationships. I mean, you've kind of built everything around. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
You are a lot of fun, but it's funny, you know, we got together about an hour ago, and we're just picking up where we left off last time. Relationship is so important, and it's become so scarce over the last few years. And I want to think about that for a minute. You know, where I sit in a lead pastor seat, because that's what I did for 2 decades, content was always our unique leverage, right? Preach a great sermon, people will come. Lead pastors love to hear that.
Yeah.
And I'm not, and you're a preacher.
True. Yeah.
I'm not making an excuse for bad sermons, but in the 90s and the early 2000s, content was scarce and community was plentiful.
Yes.
So a lot of churches are like, just have a great preacher, have an Annie F. Downs, a Kevin Queen, whatever. Preach great messages, people will come. And now community is scarce and content is everywhere. Do you want to talk about that shift that's happened literally in the last 20 years in the church? And what that has done to elevate community?
Well, has it elevated community, right?
Right. Has
so
it? Or are we just in this black
too.
hole? Are we in this black hole?
I mean, I think one of the challenges for pastors that I am watching with people like Pastor Kevin and some of my other friends that are pastoring is there's also a feel of like, I'm preaching on Sunday, but I'm not just preaching in the room. I'm preaching to everybody who's going to listen to this at any point.
Yeah.
And I think what used to be true when I was growing up in the church is what you were saying to the room of people was what the room of people needed. And so then there was connection around that content because it was for the room and it wasn't for the internet. And now everything we do, including this conversation, isn't just for the room.
This will be on my podcast.
Right. So there, even right now when I'm thinking and talking, I'm going like, well, there are things I will say to just y'all that I will do today because it's you and you're trustworthy. But there are times where you go, is this going to be recorded? And if it's recorded, it changes what you say. And so I sometimes wonder if the opportunity for everyone to hear us preaching to our church is affecting the community that's sitting in front of you.
That is, wow. Okay, I wasn't expecting that answer.
Sorry.
Good answer.
And I love the internet.
What do you do with that? Yeah, because I mean, you do love the internet.
I love the internet, yeah.
You've got a whole, can I say media empire? I mean, a podcast network with like legit things. So when you're speaking at Crosspoint and you're preparing a message, I just had a conversation with Craig Rochelle about this.
Yes.
And Craig...
We're very similar, me and Craig Rochelle, so good Craig, comparison, Carey.
I get confused with Craig a lot because of the way I'm built.
Yeah.
But anyway, Craig...
well done.
That was a joke.
I loved it. I was with you.
Thank you. You got that? All right, thank you. No, he says he's very intentional about the online audience because despite leading the largest church in America, the online audience is now bigger than the audience in the room. And so he's crafting it for that. I want to know what your process is when you think about the authentic community at Crosspoint, which is what? 4 or 5 locations?
Yes, five campuses.
Locations.
And then we also are in the on the Pando app and streamed at the Tennessee Prison for Women through God Behind Bars.
Wow. Okay. So 6 or 7.
Yes.
Locations. And you have thousands watching online. You have thousands attending in person.
Yes.
How do you craft a message when you're thinking of community and who you're actually speaking to?
It's so hard, right? Because the behind the scenes of Crosspoint is we have a 9, 11, and 5:30. The 9 o'clock service is the one that goes everywhere. It goes to all the campuses
so
live.
Don't blow it.
Right, literally.
Literally don't blow it.
The 9 o'clock goes everywhere live, and that is often the one that also goes to the Pando app and to God Behind Bars, the women at the Tennessee Prison for Women. And then the 11 is for the room and online, and the 5:30 is for the room. And so we are doing the same content, but there's a little bit of difference in how it happens. So particularly when we talk about community, of what we want the people to do, I used to teach elementary school. And so everything I teach, I want them to do something afterwards because that's what we were taught at University of Georgia, go Dogs Sick 'em. What I was taught at University of Georgia was that every time you teach a kid something, the way they actually learn is when they do it. And so every time I teach, I want an activation around what I'm doing because that is in the room and online. Because the reality is the gospel is going to go global to every person because of the internet.
Right.
We don't want to stop streaming necessarily, right? We want the world to get access to your incredible teaching of the gospel. There are people in closed countries that are hearing sermons because y'all are getting up and teaching on Sundays and it's streamed. So I don't want us to not do that. But for me, the way we kind of try to tie in community is to have some sort of activation around it. Like, hey, when you go to lunch today, talk about this one question. Or I taught last Sunday and I taught on Moses and the burning bush, and the activation was having everybody take off their shoes. And so then at least there's this unified thing that happened in the room that you talk about later that may have some effect on conversation in community. And so to me, that's it, because we don't want to let go of one or the other. We don't want to stop teaching to the room because they are the people who have shown up to church. Like they are looking to experience the gospel. So we want to teach to the room. We don't want to ignore that this is going to the internet because may God use it to draw people to himself who are not walking into a church today. But the community, the people who are looking to know someone are the ones who showed up in the room.
Yeah, so there's a couple of takeaways on that. One is, there have been a number of pastors who over the last few years, everybody went online 5 years ago, right? In 2020 for obvious reasons. And then a lot of people kind of throttled back because they wanted a full room.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I want the room to be full. I don't want people watching online. So therefore, we're going to throttle our digital footprint. Good idea, bad idea? What's your take on that?
I think the people in your town will find the church that if they are looking to go to a church, they will find the church that matches what they want, for better or for worse, you know? And so I think the throttling back makes sense to me in some ways, because you want to serve your city and you want to serve the people God's put in front of you. And so I totally understand that. I think it's great. It's not what CrossPoint has done today. And it's not what the rest of my life looks like. I mean, my life is far more effective online than it is in person.
Yeah, because, it's interesting. You have a real relationship, like being backstage with you, being at conferences with you. People always want the picture taken with you. They want to meet you. Talk about the quality of those relationships that you meet when you find people in the AFD universe.
Yeah.
Like, I have that with my own podcast with leaders and senior pastors who feel like they have a relationship with me.
Yes.
What is the quality of those connections?
Well, it's one of the gifts of our sermons going online is that people are in the grocery store and they are shopping for celery, and you are saying to them something they've never heard from the book of John, and they're getting teary because we have their full mental attention. And we have this, podcasting is this extraordinary access to people's minds. We are in both of their ears, most likely, while they are doing whatever else they're doing with their hands, but we have their minds. And so it's one of the reasons that I think it is so effective. And one of the reasons that the people in your church who you run into at the grocery store that may not have been there for 3 weeks, but they've listened online, still come up to you and speak to you. Or the reason people feel like, because of our online presences, is that plural? They feel like we are friends.
Oh, yeah.
And part of that is because we are invited into their lives in very intimate ways and in intimate times. A thing that happens to me a lot if I meet a husband and wife is the wife will tell me what she loves about like a podcast or a book she read or something. And the husband will say, I hear your voice every morning in the bathroom. And so, and we'll laugh about it. And he'll be like, yeah, I have a podcast called Let's Read the Gospels where I read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John every month. And so it is literally 3 chapters a day, and you've read all 4 of them in a month. And I will have husbands come up and say, I listen to the Gospels with you because my wife listens while she gets ready in the morning. And so there is not another way that a couple is going to have me in their bathroom in the morning, right? There's no other way that I am going to be with them in that moment. But because it is intentional and intimate for them, and my voice is there, they feel like I'm there.
Yeah, it's weird because you've got people who are like, every morning in the gym, I listen to you, or when I'm on my run, or on my commute, or that kind of thing, and you become a best friend. And I have a virtual relationship with people I've never met because I listen to podcasts
That's exactly
as well.
Right.
That I feel like I've listened to you for a decade. You're my best friend.
If I saw you, I would speak to you, and you would not know who I was. I'm the exact same.
Where we left off, except there was nothing to leave off.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right.
It's this weird thing. And I think people are struggling with that aspect of community because we feel connected, but we're not. So let's break that down a little bit. You can take it through the lens of CrossPoint. You can take it through the lens of your own audience.
Sure.
But I would love to know, what are the limits of an online relationship to you? Because I agree, everybody you want to reach is online.
Yes.
It would be somewhat foolish for CrossPoint or any church to completely throttle back their internet, because then Nashville just finds other people and you don't reach the world with the gospel. This is the tool God has given us. It's like, go back 500 years and all right, we're against the printing press. We're going to write out manuscripts by hand.
Yeah.
That's how the Apostle Paul did it.
Yes.
That's how we're going to do it.
Yes.
Well, you kind of miss that one, right? So, but what are the limits of online relationship? Or is there such a thing as an online community, an online relationship?
That's a great question. I think there is online community.
Yeah.
I don't think it looks the same. I think the question that churches, and me in a lot of ways in my own life too, can ask is, how do we serve the city we're in and how do we serve the world? In 1996, when I was in youth group, how do we serve the city was we show up at church and then we go and, share the gospel on the street corner, whatever. How do we serve the world? We go on mission trips. And now thinking of community, how do we serve our city? Well, we show up and we're in small groups. And how do we serve the world? We put this online. We still want to go when we want to go and all the things. And so for me, Carey, when you're asking, is there real community online? I think there are people who have access to real community for the first time through the internet because of their own insecurities, their own disabilities, if they're homebound and unable, or if their anxiety or something has them where they stay at home. But y'all see this on your churches, if you're live streaming your service and there's people leaving real prayer requests in the comments. And you go like, I wouldn't have said that out loud to anyone. And you just said that out loud in a group of people because they feel like they go to church with the other people who watch online with them. I think that's really true. Now, is that true when you have something happen at 3:00 in the morning and you have a medical emergency and no one can call you or me that are our podcast listeners when they have a medical emergency at 3 a.m.? And so also we get to cultivate, if you are able, to cultivate real life community, hopefully through your church and through the groups that you're in, through what is offered, through what you start through your church, and being a part of something so that you are reaching the world, but you are also having a 3 a.m. friend.
I've heard it described before as refrigerator rights. We're the people who come into your house and can just open your refrigerator like they were your kids. And take whatever they want.
Yes.
I love that.
I
the people
do
who
too.
don't knock, the people, not criminals, but like
they also don't knock, I've heard.
Yeah, they also don't knock.
Yeah.
But like actual people who just walk in and act like they own the place.
That's right. And that takes a lot of time.
It does.
And that takes, I eat dinner with a family once a month for the last 10 years. And we've missed 2. And
that's incredible with your schedule.
I do not leave their house without putting the next one on our calendar.
Wow.
And so, 2 weeks ago, I walked in, they had buffalo chicken dip sitting on the counter and I ate some of it. And then I said to the husband, oh my gosh, I didn't even ask. And he said, I can't believe at this point you would think you'd have to ask. And I thought, why do I think I have to ask? And so those friendships that gave us this DTR kind of thing between me. Where I kind of went, I'm never going to ask again. He was like, don't ever ask again. And it deepened our relationship. That isn't going to happen online. But we do have the opportunity to reach people who would never come to a church, I'll tell this story. I had surgery a couple of months ago. And some of the doctors and nurses believe what we believe and some of them don't.
Sure.
And I told a story from stage about the surgery. And one of a nurse's friends tagged her on Instagram and said, did you hear Annie tell this story? Well, then the nurse ends up watching the whole service.
Wow.
She doesn't get up and come to our church. She doesn't know me except passed out, getting surgery, right? She knows the sleeping version of me. She probably liked her better. But she watched a whole church service that was available online because I told a story and one of her friends were in the room and her friend tagged her when I told the story. That has nothing to do with me. I just got up and did my part. The friend tagging the friend, she could watch it online without ever leaving her home. So we want to appreciate that community can happen that way and that connection can happen that way. We just don't want that to be the only thing. And we also don't want to go, forget it, we aren't serving the internet.
So, you're reminding me of a conversation I had a couple of years ago with Nikki Gumbel. Nikki from Alpha, amazing ministry if you haven't checked it out of the UK. And for years, for decades, Alpha has been incredibly effective at reaching unchurched people. And they do it over a meal and they get all these people. And Nikki for years was totally against online ministry. Like that won't work. Alpha, the secret is a meal. It's real life connection. And then COVID hit. He had no choice. The team had been telling him, you got to go online. And I had a conversation with him where he said publicly, I was wrong. And what he discovered, Alpha is still happening in person, and that's sort of the destination. But now they offer online groups. People get intimate a lot faster. It's like what you said about somebody joining the chat at Crosspoint going, hey, can you please pray? My marriage is hanging on by a thread. I don't know what's going on. Chances are that person is nobody to talk to.
They're not leaning over and saying that on a Sunday morning.
Because if they had people to talk to, they're not dropping that in the chat.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Because that's something that they've dealt with. And he's like, we're going to run a hybrid thing now. We still love in person, but people are going faster. And he says, if you're going to reach Muslims, they can't show up at a Gothic-looking church on a Tuesday night at 7:00 for a meal without being shunned by their community. But they can sneak in online and find stuff. I'd love for you to comment, because you have such a robust online community, about the kind of disclosures, emails, DMs.
Yeah.
Like, what's happening in your online community that is real and vulnerable?
Yeah, it sometimes makes me sad.
I know.
Because my DMs get filled up with people who need discipleship.
And so what does that look like without revealing confidence?
Yeah. Well, if they put it in my DMs, they certainly should understand that I have not signed an NDA in any of their lives. So you're coming to me, sis. You know, it has really shown me. I mean, I had a girl DM me last week and say, I live a state away from my family. I'm not married. My grandparents are still alive, but is moving home going backwards. And I was like, if your grandparents, I mean, I can see most of y'all are, I'm 44. My grandparents haven't been alive for 15 years. I'm like, if your grandparents are alive, go there. Grandparents are so great. Loving grandparents are so great. And so there's moments like that what I wish she had was a mentor or someone who discipled her or a small group.
Supposed to be a friend who could answer that question for her.
Yes. And very often, if I respond with, I actually can't answer this for you because I don't know your life. But I can tell you that there's probably someone, I always send them to y'all. There's probably someone in your church who would love to answer this for you. And so that is what and my line is always, I don't know enough of you to give you wise counsel. Now, this girl, I said, in your walk with God, there is no going backwards if you're pursuing him. Your city doesn't determine if you're going backwards. And so there is no going backwards with God. Go be near your grandparents.
You know, because I talk about burnout a lot, I get a lot of questions
I
about
bet.
that. I get a ton of DMs from lead pastors who are like, am I done? Am I finished at this church? And I don't know them, Adam. And very similar advice. I don't know that I can answer your question. Thank you so much for asking it. Are there a couple of people in your community who know you, who know the situation, who love you enough to tell you the truth?
Yes.
You know, because telling the truth is hard. It's like, oh, you should stay. Oh, you should. No, if I really love you, I'm going to tell you the truth.
Yeah, that's right.
And you have that person, same advice over and over again. And I wonder, as we think about connection, whether, you know, so if you're translating this for a church with an online ministry, and it's not Annie F. Downs or the Carey Nieuwhof Leadership Podcast that's handling this, what recommendations would you have for churches on how to handle those, like, here's my really heartfelt prayer request, subtext in brackets, I do not have any actual friends, which is a growing number of people.
Or the thing I need to ask someone, I can't ask someone in my life.
Exactly.
And so they trust us. So, I mean, one of my thoughts in real time, Carey, is, are you checking your pastor's DMs? Not for their good or bad behavior, but the people who are listening to your church online are listening to the teaching pastor.
Right.
So that's who they feel the most connected with, probably over your church's Instagram account. So they may be sending you stuff in your church's Instagram account that you can channel them to someone who can disciple them. But my bet is in Church of the City, New York, John Tyson gets the DMs, not Church of the City, New York. I bet Kevin gets the DMs, not Crosspoint as much percentage wise. So is someone checking the DMs of the teaching pastor that week to say, is there any discipleship that needs to be done? Just send them our way.
Or can you? I often do that. I'll screenshot a DM and send it to my team. Can we help this person out? I'll give them a quick response.
Yes.
I think that's a great idea. You know what? And chances are 2 to 3x the number of people will follow a person over an organization.
That's right.
Or a church.
That's right.
Right.
That's
like
right.
Your podcast network doesn't have as many followers as.
That's right. That's exactly right. And so I think that is one way that we can help, is we can be monitoring the people that are connected. Are we in trouble?
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Need a microphone.
Could y'all not hear it this whole time?
All right.
Wild.
That's great.
Huh. Well, I hope you're still having a great time. So I think that's an important one, is figuring out, monitoring the teaching pastor. And then also, so much of the DMs I get are from, I'm not married yet, so a lot of them are from single women who want to feel connected at their church and want to feel seen. And And what I am saying to the single people, just for y'all to know, is I'm saying, have you said this to anyone at your church? Are you helping this situation at all? Or are you just complaining to me? And so, because if they aren't willing to help, and so I posted about I spoke at a church about singleness at the beginning of the month, and 3 women from the same church left a comment. I wish our church had this. And I said, do y'all see each other? Start it. There's 3 of you. You're right here. Meet each other, get together, tell your group's pastor you're starting a group, and see who else joins. And I was like, stop complaining. And I didn't tell them to stop complaining. I'm saying that to y'all. In my head, I thought, stop complaining and get together. But what I said to them is, wild, 3 of you from the same church are right here. This is very exciting. Looks like there's a small group.
Well, I think that's something else I wanted to say too. So I love the idea that the people online, we have to connect in real life somehow. Yes. And we've got to somehow, because you can have a virtual group, you can have a Facebook group or whatever, or some kind of campus chat, but you want to drive that to real relationship.
Yeah.
But there's also a sea of people who actually physically attend a church who feel all alone.
Yes.
And you last year or the year before felt like God put it on your heart to start this Single Purpose League.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that and what you're learning about people who, can I just say, they're alone together? It's like Robert Putnam, Bowling Alone.
Yes.
Right? Like takeout is now 72% of all US restaurant sales.
Wow.
It's like people aren't dining together anymore. They're just taking it home, watching Netflix, that kind of thing. Yeah. So there's a lot of people in a room who feel all alone. And that's happening at our churches. And everybody says, oh, we're a friendly church. It's like, well, have you dug down on that?
Yes. Will you tell the other stat you have about marriage? How many people in a...
Sorry. I can't quote this. We were talking backstage. I can't quote this chapter and verse, but I was looking at a graph recently that showed that the number of people living single and alone in America is now greater than the number of people with husband and wife and kids at home.
Yeah.
That there are more single person households than there are. And that could be divorced. It could be never married. It could be, we broke up. We are never married, but we had a kid. It could be single parents. So there's a real variety now. But the idea that, we're going to plant a church and reach, married people with kids, you're actually shooting for a minority of the U.S. population. And that's happening right now in real time.
In 1970, the U.S. Census was that 23% of people over 18 were single. The 2023 census is 46.4.
So half.
Half of America. Now, only 20% of the churches, according to Barna, 22% of the church is single. But that is 1 in 4 people sitting out there at your church is not married today, whether they're never married, divorced, or widowed. And so we started Single Purpose League. Y'all are not going to believe this story. I did a series 2 summers ago on the podcast called Summer Lovin' about dating. And as a marketing plan, we decided to say to the internet, hey, if you're single, I want to send you an email. All we wanted to do was tell the single people we were doing this series. And so and previous to this, I haven't talked about being single very publicly. I didn't want to be the poster child, right? And so that felt not fun to me. And so I got online and I said, hey, if you're not married today, I would love to send you an email. I'm not selling you anything. Can I just send you an email? And we were hoping for 1,000 in the week that we had to announce this thing. In about 5 hours, we had 1,000.
Wow.
By the end of the week, we had 20,000 email addresses. And what God kind of whispered to me in that moment was not that singles were not being served somewhere. It's that 20,000 singles wanted to hear from me about singleness. And I was like, no, thanks. But what ended up coming from it is our team. I mean, we just had this moment. You've had this at church where you say, okay, we're going to do a Sunday evening service and see if anybody comes. And then it fills up and you're like, oh my.
Yeah.
Or opening a college ministry or a singles ministry or a divorce ministry or a marriage ministry. And suddenly so many more people sign up than you thought. And you're like, it almost feels like a sacred moment of understanding. And so we just had a sacred moment of understanding that God was asking us to do something as a team that we did not realize we were going to be asked to do. And so that was the birth of Single Purpose League. We just said, okay, we're going to do a gathering, an online gathering, a Patreon that says, if you want to talk about this, if you are a Christian that is not married today and you want to talk about that part of your life, we kind of joke all the time. We know nobody wants to be in this group, but if you want to be in this group, you can be in this group. And so there's about 2,000 people that are in it right now for the last year, right out a year today. Today's our 1 year of having Single Purpose League. And we've had about another 1,500 come and go. Whenever someone starts dating, they leave. We understand. But we did a survey pretty early on, Carey, and we said, do you feel seen and cared for by your church? And 46% said no. But that is not to steal your hope. Here's the hope. Then we said, where do you want to meet someone? Of the top 10, 4 of them were church or church adjacent.
So not Tinder.
No, I mean, online apps are on there, but so was at my church, through my church friends. And so what that said to us is singles want to be involved in church and they want to be seen. They don't feel seen. That is not only a church's problem, that's also the single people's problem. And so I'm Katie Boatman, who leads Single Purpose League with me. We are spending a lot of time reminding Christian singles, you have a role in this, to not just complain, but to be a part of the solution. Because you and I have talked about this, but all my pastor friends are mostly male. And most men who got into pastoring said, I want to be a pastor, I should get married. Or I'm gonna get married so I have a partner that goes with me in this. Great, I love marriage, I wanna do it. I think you did the right thing. And so what happens is a lot of my peers got married in their 20s and then they went to seminary. And now they're running churches 20 years later, 30 years later. Well, you didn't experience singleness and you didn't get trained in it either. So how in the world can we expect you to understand?
Yeah, I was last single at 23.
That's right.
What do I remember?
That's right.
Very
and so it's super unfair of single people to expect our pastors to understand. It's like landing you on Mars and being like, breathe. We're breathing. Why aren't you breathing? And you're like, I have none of the tools to breathe up here. We're like, well, you should. Do you not love me? You should have the tools to breathe here. And so I'm saying to single people a lot, please go talk to your group's leader. Please go talk to your pastor. Please ask what you can do to help this. If you want to be seen in church, get up and do something to be seen. And then I'm saying to my pastor friends, the singles want to be part of your church and they are half of our country. And they will tell you they don't have enough time to serve. We have plenty of time. We have lots of time. We go to yoga a lot. We have time. We have time, we have resources, and we want to be there. And so it's this like, I feel, you and I have talked about this, I feel like a real unique moment with God that I get to talk to pastors a lot and I get to talk to singles a lot. And what I'm hearing from both is that they want this to be better. That's the good news. None of the pastors sitting out here like, you know who I don't like? Singles. Yeah. No, of course not. You care about the people in your church that are divorced and you care about the widows and the widowers and you care about the people who have never been married but want to be. Of course you do. So that's what pastors feel. And what single people feel is, I love church and I love Jesus and I want to be seen and understood. And so there is this opportunity when y'all both want the same thing to meet each other and serve the half of the country that is living unmarried.
I think it's very tempting to look out over your church, even a room like this, and go, see, all these people are connected in community.
Yeah.
Would you say there's a lot of single people who, based on that 46% who wish their church would do more, or whatever the stat was, who still feel alone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because they sit alone. Or they sit with 2 other single people, but on a weekend where those 2 other single people go on a ski trip, they sit alone. They drive in alone. They park alone. You know that because they take up more parking spaces. And they come in alone. So they have to do that walk. You've done this if you're married and your husband or wife is out of town and you go, oh, I've got to walk in by myself. That's what a single person does every week, is walk in by themselves and look around and go, will anybody notice me? Are any of my friends here? It's that panic of like, where's my person? Where's my person? There's none, there's none. And so then they hurry and they go sit. If they don't see someone they recognize, they hurry and they go sit somewhere and they kind of scoot toward a middle so they don't have to talk to anybody or be told to move later. They're looking at whatever paper you handed them or they're on their phone doing something very important, I'm sure, until the room gets dark and then they relax because now it's dark. And that is what happens when you go by yourself.
I think that is so helpful for us to understand and to listen to. And I would also say, as a married person, if you think about it, you're right. It is normative. If you're going to be in a evangelical church, it's normative that you're probably a man, you're probably married, you've been married for a while, you've got kids, and you think that everyone else is moving toward that norm, or the marriage broke down and, they're not in that norm, but they'll get back to that at some point. And I just think it's really important to elevate that actually isn't where the culture is anymore.
Yeah.
And that a lot of people, even in marriage, feel alone.
Yes.
One of the things that really surprised me, I'm not a good counselor, but when people would come in for counseling, I would almost immediately refer them out. But I would ask the question, well, who else have you told this to? And they're like, nobody. And I'm like, well, why not? And this is like 15 years ago. They're like, well, I can't talk to my wife about these things. I can't talk to my husband about these things. So who do you talk to? Nobody. And that was years ago. Now, I just see so much isolation.
Yeah.
I would love to know, prescriptively, what would you suggest that people could do to help bridge that loneliness gap? What are some to-dos, even one or two, that would be tangibly helpful?
I mean, I think what your church sees from stage matters. You don't have to have a single teacher talk about singleness, but when they see someone unmarried teaching on a Sunday, that goes a really long way. It says that you equal, because part of it is, we have this resource, anniefdowns.com/pastoring singles. You can have it. It's just a 7-page or something, questions to think about when you're pastoring singles. But one of the questions to ask yourself is, what's your theology of singleness? Do you actually think a 40-year-old man who's not married is equal in maturity as a 40-year-old man who is? Can you listen to a 40-year-old man who's a teaching pastor who's not married and believe that he has actually done the work with God to be up there? It's just worth thinking through, because you're modeling to your church who you think has a word for them every Sunday. And so having an unmarried person leading worship, teaching, doing announcements, being part of the offering on Sunday morning goes a really long way. You know that because you've worked on racial diversity too. And this is another version of, can you show more diversity on stage, where you've worked on age and race and all the things to show the family of God on your stage on a Sunday? Is that including people who are not married in that? And it goes a really long way. And then the examples you use as you're teaching will help build community. When your examples are, this friend comes over and eats with us. Mm-hmm. Or so here's a great example. I heard a pastor teaching on Sabbath, and he said, on your Sabbath day, just turn your phone off and be with the people in your home. Boom. That's me. I don't even have a pet. Why? How would I have time? And so when he follows that and says, and if you live alone, I bet your Sabbath looks a little different. So you can still turn your phone off, but what if you and a couple of people got together and you put your phones to the side and y'all had a meal together? You're encouraging community. You're remembering from stage that everyone sitting out there listening to you does not live with other people. And you're normalizing that to the people who do live with other people. So all your examples from stage, if you can remember to use examples that also say, here's what community looks like if you're not married. It's what you just said. It's not just about teaching how marriages thrive and survive. It's about how people thrive and survive.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people who are choosing not to get married, who don't want to get married, that are going like, I've given my life to God. Carey and I were talking about this earlier. Yeah. The Catholic Church has really done a great job of making singleness a path. Mm-hmm. This is a path toward abundant life. Protestant church has not said there is a path to abundant life if you choose not to get married. And instead it has been, when you get married, you can have sex. Mm-hmm. When you get married, you can know your calling. When you get married, you can have 2 incomes and you'll be able to give. And instead of going, if you never get married, what does it look like to have intimate relationships?
So another thing that's happening, you split your time between Nashville and New York.
Yes.
And
because I'm single, I can.
One of the trends that's fascinating me, people are ditching dating apps. I've heard this on some
Yeah.
secular podcasts I've looked at. They're done with like being ghosted and finding people whose profile is amazing. Real life experience is not great. And in New York and other major cities, running clubs, pickleball clubs.
Yes.
It's like, that's where I'm going to meet actual human beings.
Yes.
And I wonder if there's a similar married trend, but people are like, all right, online life is good, but it has its limits. We're all
Yes.
there.
Yes.
What are you seeing as an opportunity for church leaders to connect with people outside of the building?
Yeah, I'll tell you the funniest thing we've seen about Single Purpose League is we thought these Christian singles would want to hear good content. And what keeps happening over and over is they want to talk to each other more than they want me to talk to them. And so they're doing meetups without us. They've started Instagram accounts without us. When we did like hey, meetup Saturday and put what city you're in and people can join you, we had over 50 different meetups happen. With some of them were 2 people. Some of them were 11. And then we took Single Purpose League to Dollywood at Christmas, which is excellent. 200 of them came. It's in Knoxville. It is not easy to get to. And half of them came alone because they knew when they got there, they would meet someone that they were friends with because of what we share. So what we are seeing, and yes, I mean, dating apps are fine. It's a way to like fish in a pond, I guess. But all over the place, we're seeing people go, hey, let's start the conversation here online and then let's take it into real life. Or let's just get in a book club and get together. Or pickleball really is the thing in New York for single people. It is like, go out there in your little pickleball outfit with your paddle and meet a guy. And so what my curiosity around the church and my curiosity about what we get to do in 2025 is how do we get to build pickleball courts that people want to come to? Right?
That's a great question.
Like how do we build things that people go, I'd rather go to, this is what y'all talk about at every staff meeting. I know. But how do we get people to, I'd rather go to that than sit here and do this? And is there a hybrid version? So I'm thinking of, is there a TV show that a bunch of people in your church actually want to talk about? The Chosen would be a Christian-y one. Severance is a non-Christian-y one, right? Okay. So it's a show everyone's talking about. So the last 3 meals I've had with friends this week, Severance has come up.
Yeah.
And so can we have a small group around Severance? Probably not, because I say the F word a lot. But I'm curious, how do we take things that are popping off in culture? We're not trying to copy culture, but how do we make that a discussion point? The Chosen's an easier.
Cooperate rather than compete.
Yeah, cooperate rather of going like, hey, when season 5 of The Chosen comes out, we're going to show it on Tuesday nights. If y'all want to come watch, bring your food, eat together, sit at a table with your friends, and then we'll talk about it. And it doesn't cost anybody money except your staff who's got to be there to run. I'm just curious if there's a way to cooperate with pickleball, with The Chosen, with these things that are taking center conversation and culture where because people are circling up about The Chosen, whether we plan it or not. People are circling up around pickleball, whether we plan it or not. What does it look like to partner in that? And in your community, it's something else. I understand, like Georgia football or, whatever the thing is, there's something else. But what is the thing that your community is already circling up about? And how do we get in the center of it and redeem it with the gospel?
Annie, this has been so fascinating to have this conversation with you and to get some practical takeaways.